Hey everyone, thanks for watching on YouTube. If you like what you're seeing, go down and hit subscribe down below. Or if you really want to help out, you can go check out our Patreon at patreon.com/commandersbrew. But we're going to get right to today's deck tech. Volrath, the Shapestealer. From the new Commander Precon C19, I tell you, I just love brewing with these new commanders.
Me too.
As you well know, Sean, and everyone listening and viewing out there, like, I'm over the moon with all the new commanders that have been printed in the last few months. I think they're just so great. I think they really nailed it. And Volrath is one of the ones that really jumped out at me. Honestly, at first I was like kind of underwhelmed, but then once we started talking about it, and you can hear it happen on the set review, well, I'm just like, well, actually, wait, this is great.
Yeah.
I really got into it. So Volrath, Shapestealer, he's the 2 and 3 Sultai, so black, green, blue. It's 5 mana commander. It's a 7/5. He's a legendary shapeshifter. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 target creature. And then you can pay 1 generic, and until your next turn, Volrath becomes a copy of target creature with a counter on it, except it's 7/5 and has this ability. So you can constantly change Volrath. If you leave it as a creature, it lasts for a full turn around the table, and it can be any counter. It doesn't have to be the -1/-1 counter that Volrath places on something, right? These are all key aspects of this commander, and these are all the aspects of the commander that might not jump out at you right away, but that absolutely make it such a great card.
And one thing I want to point out that is maybe not as intuitive is that it becomes a 7/5.
Yes.
So it's as if the card he's copying, you scribble out the power toughness and write 7/5 in its place.
And as you probably know right away, there are some creatures out there with very low power as a way to mitigate their power level. So if we can become those creatures and also have a really big power toughness,
yes,
well, that's going to be a great advantage. And that is exactly the advantage that we're looking at using and abusing with this deck. So let's not waste any more time, and let's start talking about the neat moves.
Working on a
neat moves. Okay, so Volrath can be whoever we want him to be. It's kind of a fun, like, philosophy on life.
Isn't that a great message for all of us? We can be who we want to be.
Be whoever you want to be, as long as it's copying someone else who has a counter.
Right, that is not the advice. The advice, if you want to be someone, you don't seek to copy other people. Be inspired by other people, but you in life you must be your own person.
No, you must manipulate someone else and become them. That is what you want to do. That's
Okay.
that's actually what Volrath does.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about the 7/5 being key. Commander damage is a way that we're going to try and win with this deck. It's not the only way, but it's going to be our main route. Yeah.
I just realized with his power and toughness, this is the perfect commander for a deck that is 75%.
Oh, wow, you are right. I mean, spoiler alert, this is definitely a 75%. This is more like a 55% deck, to be perfectly honest, but it's still fun and very effective. Yeah. So before we get into like how we're going to like try and like really strike and win here, let's talk about getting these counters on creatures, right? There's a couple different ways we're going to do it. Sean, why don't you talk about these first few here?
Ooh, we got Loyal Guardian. This is the Lieutenant Rhino from the last Commander Precon. It's 4 and a green for a 4/4 with trample, but as long as you have your commander, your whole team gets +1/+1 counters at the beginning of combat. We got Novigen Sages, 4 blue for a Human Advisor Mutant. Starts as a printed 0/0, but it enters the battlefield with Graft 4. So it enters the battlefield with 4 +1/+1 counters, so it's a printed 0/0 that it acts as a 4/4. And when a new creature comes in, you're allowed to put one of their counters on a new creature, yours or your opponent's. And you can pay 1 to remove 2 of Novigen Sage's counters from any creature, actually. It's not just there. You can remove 2 counters from among our creatures. Can come from them, can come from other ones. We can split it up, and we get to draw a card.
Yep.
And another way to get counters on things is Tetsamok Primal Death. I love this one. 4 black, Elder Dinosaur Legendary, 6/6 with Death Touch. We can pay a black to reveal it from our hand and put a prey counter on target creature. That counts as a counter. We have to do that on our turn. And then when we decide to cast Tetsamok, let's say we've put those counters out, Volrath has become the one we care about, then we can cast Tetsamok. When it enters the battlefield, we destroy each creature your opponents control with a prey counter on it. I'm only just noticing that Tetsamok says opponents control.
Yeah.
So if you somehow get prey counters on your own thing, you're fine.
Yeah, you are fine. This is maybe the neatest move I think in the whole deck, kind of, to put it right up front here. But it was really cool. Like just searching for things in Magic that put counters on target creatures. Tetsamok was easily the most fun thing that I found, because like you just get to have this guy in your hand and just pay black and put it on any, put it whenever you want. Now you can only do it during your turn, so you can't do it as like an instant speed thing. But just being able to use your black mana to be like, okay, well, I want Volrath to be that maybe, or maybe this thing. And again, being put on your own stuff, you're totally safe to do that. I love the synergy that Tetsamok has with Volrath. It's really, really neat. And again, it can just be kind of like a pseudo board wipe in some cases if you need it to be, right? So very, very strong. Graft is another thing. It's like, you can graft onto other creatures that don't natively have counters on them, so Volrath can become them. And obviously Loyal Guardian's great. Just putting it on everything you control. And that's the key. We're really focusing on our own deck because that's what we can control, right? So Volrath's going to look to become our own copies of our own creatures. But there are definitely cases where Volrath becoming one of your opponent's creatures is going to be just as good, right? It's going to be
great. And Volrath's original ability of putting a counter on a -1/-1 is like, we will always have access to an opponent's creature with Volrath. So we don't need to worry about that.
No, exactly. And sort of teaming up with a couple of these abilities or a couple of other cards. So Herald of Secret Streams, the 3 and a blue for the 2/3 that says creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. There's going to be a lot of counters in this deck, so very important that you keep track of which ones are which, because in this case Herald cares about the +1/+1 counters, but just very good. Really awesome with Loyal Guardian, this card. And this will often result in Volrath being unblockable, which is very, very strong.
Pretty good.
Simic Ascendancy. This one was a fun one. It didn't work. Oh, because I spelled Simic wrong. Looking it up on...
You spelled Simic wrong?
I spelled Simic Siimic.
Oh yeah.
bit of a typo. But Simic Ascendancy is a real win condition in this deck, and it's just a nice thing to pair up. You're putting so many +1/+1 counters everywhere. It's the 2 mana enchantment, a green and a blue, that has activated ability of 1 green/blue. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So that alone is just worth it in this deck. We're very happy to just place a counter so that we can, guaranteed to be copying Volrath into something. But also, it says whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you just win the game. It's not hard to get to the level where you have 20 growth counters. And here's the other thing. This card, like I know in Standard specifically, and even in some Commander decks really, is kind of win more. Like if you're at the point where you have 20 +1/+1 counters on something, like, or more than that, like you're doing pretty good, and generally you should be able to win from something like that. Now I know Commander's a bit of a different beast, but specifically in this deck, we're kind of putting it all over the place. So over time, this can be a threat. Anyway, so I really like it in this deck. Even if you don't end up winning with it, it's going to be a nice like distraction for your opponents. Like they're going to need to deal with this once you start getting 18, 19 counters on stuff. And finally, we have Champion Lambholt, which is just going to make our things unblockable. It's creatures with power less than Champion Lambholt's power can't block creatures you control, and then whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. We have lots of other ways to put +1/+1 counters on the champion as well. So again, making Volrath unblockable is just a really great thing to be able to do. Champion is just such a deadly card. You're just going to get through lot of board states. A lot of board states with this one.
I've seen Champion of Lambholt quite quickly and reliably make entire teams unblockable.
Yeah.
I know that it's fragile because if they destroy Champion of Lambholt while you're in combat, like after you've declared attackers, you've committed to the attack and now they can block.
Yeah.
But like I would rather a removal spell go to the champion than go to my Tetsamok, for example.
Yeah, or your commander, which is going to be the real threat, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So these are just some. So we got some neat interactions here, putting counters on things, and using these counters outside of just the ability with Volrath, right?
I guess I've also hadn't considered you could make Volrath a champion of Lambholt as you cast other things, and just automatically get counters on Volrath from doing that.
Absolutely. And putting counters on Volrath is an excellent ability, and in fact is one of the main things we want to do in this deck, because the main angle that we kind of, it's almost sneaky a little bit, but I mean, they're going to see it once it starts happening. But what we want to do is we want to put 4 counters on Volrath. That's all you need. You need to get him to be 11 power. And then we get some of these creatures out that can double up their power. Oof. And we have Volrath become a copy of them. So, Sean, why don't you read these 3 here, these top 3.
We got Chameleon Colossus. This is the shapeshifter that for 2 green starts as a 4/4 with changeling, all the types. It has protection from black already. So does that mean Volrath can't copy it?
Oh yeah, you're right, it does. I didn't even think of that. It's got pro black.
There's other ones that do this though. Oh, you know what? Anyway, pro black.
Yeah, but I guess pro black means Volrath can't, because it is target.
Yeah.
It becomes a copy of a target creature. Okay, well, it can't be targeted by, which means Chameleon Colossus is useless then, kind of.
I mean, it's still a very threatening card.
But don't worry, because we have a version of Chameleon Colossus that's even actually better.
Hero's Bane, 3 green for a 0/0 Hydra that enters with 4+1/+1 counters. This is one of the Hydras that is not variable in size until you pay 2 green. Then you put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is its power. If you've switched this to Volrath, or if you switch Volrath to this, and then you're doubling Volrath's +1, doubling its power through +1/+1 counters. So it starts with 4, but Volrath becomes a 7/5 version of this without any counters. But when you spend Volrath's ability, Volrath gets 7 counters.
Yeah.
Whereas the Hero's Bane only gets an additional 4 the first time.
Exactly. And God forbid you be able to do it twice. You're just going to be...
But I mean, what kind of green deck can get access to 8 mana?
Exactly. It's going to be very difficult.
We also got God Eternal Ronus from the fairly recent War of the Spark. 3 green, legendary zombie god, 5/5 with Death Touch. And it's got that god text that if it is ever killed, if it ever is dead or in exile, you get to put it back in your library 3 from the top, 3rd from the top. But when it enters the battlefield, you double the power of each other creature you control until end of turn, and they gain vigilance if that wasn't enough.
Yeah, very good ability in Commander, obviously. We always talk about that.
Yeah.
This is what we want to do. Get a few counters on Volrath, perhaps, and then hit one of these things where we double it and then make him very difficult to block, add a little evasion in there, and then all of a sudden we just hit and kill him. We're at 22 power Commander, and look out.
Hit it and quit it.
Possibly my favorite version of this, because this was my idea all along. I was like, let's take these creatures that are like either themselves very elusive, because we have a lot of those as well. Like there's a lot of like can't be blocked creatures in here, so we can make Volrath become them and then double the power that way. Also, like they don't have to
after they've passed the declare a blockers phase.
Exactly, right? So you can, that's the other thing. Volrath's ability is instant speed. You can do it like at any point. So God Eternal Ronus would come down, double it, and you can switch it up then after as well. So there's a lot of neat stuff you can do. My favorite one though, which we had to like reach and make this work, is Nylea's Colossus. It's 6 and a green. It's the 6/6 that it was our preview card for this commander set. It's got Consolation. Whenever it enters the battlefield or another enchantment enters the battlefield, you double target creature's power and toughness until end of turn. So there's a lot of ways you can do this. You can make Volrath a copy of Nylea's Colossus, and then you're going to get like even more triggers when enchantments come in. You can simply have Nylea's Colossus enter and double. Like that's the base. Maybe you've done that once and you've killed someone or whatever. Maybe even someone dealt with it. But then we're running this whole package of ramp. Right? So like, how are we going to ramp in this deck? Well, the normal ways are fine, but what if we ramped with all those little auras? What if we ramped with all the auras that go on lands, and when our lands tap, they tap for additional stuff. So that way we're adding the enchantments that Nylea's Colossus wants in the deck, but they also do what we need to do, just as part of a normal commander deck. So stuff like Wild Growth, Fertile Ground, New Horizons. These are all fine ramp spells. Wild Growth is 1 green. You enchant a land, and whenever the land's tapped, it makes an additional green. Like, it's better than Llanowar Elves because it doesn't die from a board wipe. This is a legit card.
And unlike a Llanowar Elf, if you put this on an untapped land, you can to use that mana right away.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like, the dream is to play it on turn 1, of course, but you don't have to for it to be effective. It creates the mana the turn you play it. Very similar to like an artifact in that way. Fertile Ground is a 2-mana version that when it taps, it creates any color. So this will let you fix as well. And New Horizons is a more recent card. Same thing, lets you tap for when you chant. You tap it for land. Sorry, when this gives the land the ability of tap and add 2 mana of any one color. So this one again fixes, but in a slightly different way. But also when New Horizons comes in, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on something that you control. Wow. So there's even added synergy there. So we just included, so basically I took the normal ramp package you might want in a commander deck and just changed it all to these auras, these enchantments. So now all of a sudden Nylea's Colossus fully has 7 or 8 other enchantments that you can get at some point in the game and play them. And it also adds utility to those enchantments later in the game, whereas you might not care about a ramp spell. Like if we had Cultivate on turn 9 with a Nylea's Colossus, that doesn't do anything. But now pulling Wild Growth when you have your Nylea's Colossus, it sure does, right?
True.
So I think that's one of the neat moves I think that you can achieve in deck building by. It seems like you're shoehorning a Nylea's Colossus in your deck, but really the cost of putting it in the deck is pretty small once you factor in that these other sort of sources of ramp that we don't usually look towards.
Nice. And you've got a sort of a secret weapon in here, don't you? With an extra. So this is secretly a bit of an enchantment theme, but there's another secret theme hidden in here, is there not?
This is, if you look up, as I've said before on the show, a lot of times we'll build decks. We like to come at it from a fresh perspective, look at it from our own style thing, and then you can go and sort of check and see what the community is talking about, and this card's a must include, blah blah blah. Well, if you do that, everyone's talking about Volrath Infect. That is what people are saying, and it certainly is a very effective route. But I discovered though also while sort of when that sort of popped up, you don't need to make the thing all Infect. And no. I know that normally that is what you do need to do, because if you can't just throw one Infect creature in and be like, oh, I'm going to win with Infect. But in this case, you could win with Infect with one creature. So Blighted Agent or Flesh Eater Imp both specifically are very good in this deck, because if Volrath becomes a Blighted Agent, he's unblockable. And there are even some turns it's maybe I can't no, there's no turn where you're not going to win with Infect if you can double the Volrath's power. So making him unblockable and Infect, you're gonna kill someone that way.
Well, and we're talking about adding +1/+1 counters. You only need to add 3 to Volrath before making him a copy of Blighted Agent is a lethal swing.
Exactly. You don't need to double the power in that case.
Nope.
And similar with Flesh Eater Imp, the 3 and a black 2/2 that has flying in fact, and you can sack a creature to give it +1/+1 until end of turn. Well, you might not even, if you have no counters, you just need 3 other creatures to sacrifice.
Yeah.
Flesh Eater Imp, if you've been listening to the show for a while, this is a free sack outlet that is very, very strong. This can win you the game in many decks. Again, doesn't necessarily need to be Infect. So anyways, I love both of these cards as kind of a little secret little Infect route. They're the only Infect cards we have in the deck, but they can pack a real punch.
And if since we're doing so many +1/+1 counters, maybe there's a world where we weren't able to get a counter on the Blighted Agent, so we just swung in for 1 Infect damage to someone because that's all we could do with it at the time. We're obviously running cards like Evolution Sage and Flux Channeler. Evolution Sage was from War of the Spark. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, we proliferate. You can proliferate the -1/-1s that Volrath put on your opponents. You can proliferate the +1/+1s on your team. You can proliferate the poison counters your opponents might already have in case you haven't done 10 in one shot. Flux Channeler does the same thing, but whenever you cast a non-creature spell. All those ramp enchantments, those are all non-creature spells too. Andy brewed this deck up. I'm going to assume there's a healthy dose of creatures for Volrath, but there's always a nice batch of non-creatures. And when you're dealing with teams full of plus and plus encounters, I'm happy to only get 1 or 2 proliferates off of Flux Channeler.
Yeah, the key thing here is that Flux Channeler, what I don't like, if you're like me, you always just assume this means instants and sorceries. I always just assume that. So I'm like looking through my decks being like, okay, do I have enough instant sorceries? It's like, oh wait, no, this is just non-creature. So all your artifacts, all your ramp spells, all your enchantments, all your other fun stuff, your recursion, all that kind of stuff, like it's literally half of the deck.
Yeah.
So there's about like 28 creatures in the deck and there's 33 non-creature spells. So that's probably enough for Flux Channeler that you're going to be able to hit a couple off of them, right? So it's this, yeah, these things are just going to help you beef up your team, beef up your commander, or like you said, finish off the game.
Beef it up.
Beef it up. I mean, and that's it. That's kind of it. It's pretty straightforward deck, but it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of different routes we can go down, even with this kind of, it's not really Voltron. We're not like stacking things on Volrath. We're just kind of get a few counters on him. That's good. We're good. We don't need to draw any more attention to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, he's got, your counter's got four things on him? Okay, well, that's fine. It's like, okay, now I'll drop Herald of Secret Streams and he's unblockable. Now I'll turn him into a U Spirit, pay 4 and double his power toughness. You're dead. Like,
wow.
What? That was fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, the evasion's a key thing. There's a lot of different evasion. There's even some double strike in this deck. Via like Fire Shrieker and stuff like that. So
let's go to the surprise and discovery.
Yeah. So this is a very, like, I searched for double strike in these colors, expecting to find nothing. And instead I found Joda's Avenger. 5 and a blue for a creature. It's a shapeshifter, which makes sense. It's a 4/4, and it has the ability pays 0, and until end of turn, Joda's Avenger gets -1/-1 and gains your choice of double strike, protection from red, vigilance, or shadow. And it just so happens that double strike and shadow are 2 abilities that Volrath would love to have.
So if you make Volrath a copy of Joda's Avenger, who is a printed 4/4, Volrath will instead be a 7/5 with this ability. So if we have 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, if we have 6 counters on Volrath, we can take 2 of them off to give him double strike and shadow and still have 11 power to finish off a player in 1 double strike hit.
Yeah. That's nuts, right?
That's nutty. And protection from red is not nothing.
No.
Vigilance too? Like, heck, I'll just give him vigilance anyone block on the crackback if anyone wants to come at me, one of his other players.
It's really good. I mean, these are 2 very relevant abilities, and then 2 abilities that are, it's certainly not like you're never going to use them. Like, there might be a red player out there who's got a ton of like goblins or something, and you're just like, okay, fine, protection from red. Like,
yeah, blasphemous act.
But you don't even need
this.
to. You don't even need to do that because you can give him shadow. But yeah, you're right. In response to any kind of damage or anything. But anyways, I think, man, Joda's Avenger. That feeling when you find the card where it's like no one would ever want this card ever in their life, except for this deck, and it's awesome.
Man,
this deck. I love that.
So
feeling.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the surprise and discovery, which means it's time for the budget report.
This is when we take all the cards and we put a quarter on them. That means we get next up when that machine is free.
This is the arcade version.
Yeah.
This is Commander's Brew, the arcade game.
Cool.
This one is pretty cheap. Good news, everyone. Pretty cheap deck here. We're looking at $83.45. And again, with the C19 Commanders, at the time of recording, they haven't actually dropped yet. So the prices that you're seeing for some of the Commanders may not necessarily be the prices of what they're actually going to land on once the set's released. Obviously, now you're listening to this. It's like, a week after we recorded this. So the Commanders are out. So you can sort of adjust this with your future knowledge. But at the time recording, we didn't include Volrath because we don't know the price, and it's $83. $83.45. Not bad. Not bad. And, you know, as you're about to see, you can cut some costs out of this pretty easily. Sorry. So the most expensive card in the deck is Swan Song, $450 for the single blue counters and an enchantment, instant, or sorcery, and then they get the person you counter gets a 2/2 bird. Commander staple, very strong card, but by no means necessary. By no means do we have to have a Swan Song in here, right? Inexorable Tide is next. It's up around $4 these days. 3 blue. Whenever you cast a spell, proliferate. Very good card in the deck, no question, but like not essential again. And finally, Curtain's Call is just another kind of general useful spell. It's the 5 and a black instant that has Undaunted, which means the spell costs 1 less to cast for each opponent, and it says destroy 2 target creatures. This is just a general removal spell I threw in the deck because it's it's pretty good. You're generally going to be able to get this for 3-ish mana, kill 2 creatures, good value there. But like you don't need to have this. Just put a murder in there, put a Doomblade in. I don't know, there's all of these effects are essentially very replaceable. I mean, Inexorable Tide is maybe the least replaceable, but it's also not super. You don't need it. We don't rely on Proliferate that much at all in this deck. So all of these effects are replaceable.
I might argue that Flux Channeler does an amazing Inexorable Tide impression at a gumball. It's one gumball.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, very, very good.
Man.
So you can easily slash right here like $12 to $15 right out of the budget, and you're looking at a really cheap deck that's still going to be very effective. Like instead of Swan Song, just throw in a different counter spell.
Disdainful Stroke, negate.
Disdainful Stroke, yeah. Like these, and like I said, Curtain's Call can be anything. So, very happy to have this one be pretty low.
Very nice.
I anticipate Volrath will be around a little more. I'd say around $10. But anyways, we'll see in the future if I'm right.
Let's talk about our favorite cards. Andy, what's your favorite card in the deck?
Ooh, this is the one that I thought of right away when it came to talking about this commander. It's Forgotten Ancient. Forgotten Ancient is a staple of counter-based decks. It's the 3 green 0/3 elemental. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you can move any number of +1/+1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. So a really easy way to get Volrath to be huge is to turn him into a Forgotten Ancient, let the table go around, have both your Forgotten Ancient and your Volrath be accumulating +1/+1 counters. At your upkeep, switch them all from the original Forgotten Ancient over onto Volrath, and now all of a sudden your Volrath's like a 2018 or whatever it is.
Jeez.
And it's ready to go, right? Like it's very easy to make him big with Forgotten Ancient. And even if people are being like conservative about it, remember, all we really need is like 3 or 4 counters, depending on what else you have. So it's not like you need a ton of them. So Forgotten Ancient alone can probably just grab the 3 or 4. You can have Volrath become something else if you want. Amazing. Have him hide as one of your hexproof creatures. Like that's always a good plan.
I mean, you could also why not throw all the counters on that Blighted agent? Just like cut to the chase. Just be like, sure.
Just forget it. You know what? Don't even care about Volrath. But those are the 2 kind of axes you could even attack on.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Cool. What about you?
My favorite card is Spark Double. It's the newest rare clone variant. It's 3 and a blue for an illusion 0/0. Most clones cost 4. Start at 0/0s, and you can have them enter the battlefield as anything you want. This one gets to be normally clones are creatures. This one also gets to be planeswalkers that you control. You get planeswalkers, but it has to be something you control. But it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter if it's a creature, which is perfect for Volrath. I don't think we're running any planeswalkers in this deck, but you could do that too.
We could easily, yeah.
You could, but like making this as anything you want with a +1/+1 counter is a fantastic way. It's like, well, maybe my Blighted agent doesn't have a counter now, but I can Spark Double it, and now that one does have. So for 5 mana, we can make Volrath a copy of anything we have, even without counters for Spark Double. I guess like Blighted agent is also. I keep using that as an example, but can Volrath put counters on your creatures? Yeah, you can put creatures on your creatures in an emergency.
Yep.
Blighted agent won't survive that, but most of them will.
Yeah, most of them will. Most of them have enough power toughness. There's very few 1/1s. There's the hexproof unblockable guy. Invisible Stalker.
Invisible Stalker.
He's a 1/1, but other than that, I don't think there are any other 1 toughness creatures in the deck. I mean, Champion Lambholt is, but not for long, right?
Not
you
for
can play
long.
any other creature. So yeah, it's you can throw those counters around all you want. Spark Double is just a great way. You can even make another Volrath this way, right?
Yeah.
Love it.
Only one will be your commander, though.
Yes, exactly. You can't kill with commander damage with the Spark Double version.
Right.
Right.
Oh, Andy, you put a spicy one together.
This is a spicy deck. It's a lot of fun. It's cool.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
It's a spicy commander. They created a great commander. It's easy to build around. It's easy to creatively build around these commanders. That's my favorite part of them.
Yes, they're not like on rails.
No, and like at first glance, they may seem to even be, but even those are not, right? Like, it may seem that they want you to do this, but you can go off in this other direction. So that's why I'm so pleased with all the commanders that have been created as of late. They're really strong.
Very strong.
Strong in a fun way. If you liked this episode, hey, why not leave us a little iTunes review, right? A little comment on our YouTube. A little subscribe on YouTube if you're around for that. But thanks so much for listening and or watching. We really appreciate it. We will see everyone next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Big thanks to all our patrons who make these episodes possible.
Yeah, and if you want to check out more comedy videos, check out our Brews News playlist.
Make sure you follow us on Twitch TV to see when we play live.
If you want to chat with us, head over to Twitter. We're at Commanders Brew.
And please hit subscribe to ding the bell and find out when we got new stuff coming out.
See you next time.
Bye.